We are going to talk about the latest developments in renewable energy and their contribution to South Africa's energy mix. Alastair and team, where are you guys? There are steps here, guys. You young people, I mean, you step up there. I mean, the older people, for the older people, there are steps here, eh? Are you kicking me off, or is there space for me when you all... Have we got enough chairs?
Yeah.
More than enough chairs. Alastair, take it away.
Thanks, Bernard. Okay, so firstly, one for Thabo then. So we're acutely aware that if you're still here, you're here for one of three reasons. Either you're here for the free wine.
Yes. Okay.
Number one.
Other options?
Number two, your boss is watching on the live stream and he's checking you're still here. And number three, you genuinely are interested in what we are going to say. We hope it's the third, and we're going to try and make this session as exciting and interactive as possible. So, yeah, privileged to chair the session. So just to introduce the panel members, on the far side next to Bernard is Vincent. So Vincent is the Senior Technical Advisor at SAWEA. Next to Vincent, we've got Thabo, CFO of Cennergi. Then we've got Zaid, who is the Chairman of Grid Access Working Group for SAWEA. We've then got Ricardo, who is the Business Development Advisor for Africa GreenCo. And next to me is Peter, CEO of Seriti Green. Then just to introduce myself, Alastair Muller, Partners in Performance. So I'm a partner at the firm, and we've recently been acquired by Accenture. And the capabilities of our two firms merging is quite an exciting prospect, and I think quite a powerful offering for our clients. All right, first question to you, Vincent. And it's a bit of a trick question to start things off. So what is the time frame for renewable energy to provide 100% of baseload power?
Okay, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. The market trends will inform that time frame. If I need to put a date to it, 2060 when I'm retired, and my comment becomes null and void. But really, there's three legs to that. So let's firstly look at the load factors per technology. If you look at NERSA's REIPPPP performance report for 2024, wind coming in at 37%, solar PV 25%, CSP 30%. You've got biomass and hydro giving you above 50%. Okay, so in isolation, those technologies don't work, and they cannot do base load, give or take, whatever the scenario would be. Once you start combining those, look at the risk mitigation projects, BESS plus solar PV plus wind. Other examples where, and Zaid could testify from that, we've got solar plus BESS, very good examples. Risk mitigation, you're sitting with close to a 70% load factor. Coal plants in South Africa operate 65 to 75% load factor. So it's possible and it's happening, but the time needs to tell. Because if you combine the technologies, you're increasing the energy tariff that comes with it. Applying economies of scale, and we've got a lot more risk mitigation, copy and paste across the country, the tariff would become lower, a lot more competitive. We're getting closer to baseload. But the third thing that I would echo from Ali's comment as well as Shami is the energy mix is still key. An association cannot stand in isolation, only advocating for our technologies. We need to consider what the energy planners are telling us. So what does the system operator want? What does diversification look like to ensure energy security? And then thirdly, what does the demand profile look like for the country? We don't just have malls or anything like that. We've got refineries, we've got smelters, we've got huge processing plants, and a lot of other energy-intensive users. We need to back them with sustainable energy offering longevity.
Cool, thanks, Vin. So somewhat skeptical but pragmatic answer. Zaid, maybe over to you then. So what role then can solar and wind play in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of baseload?
I know it's a good question, and thank you so much, Alastair. I'm going to agree with my esteemed wind colleague as well. I think there's a future for baseload as well. This intermittency question has always been plaguing the renewable energy industry since day one. We're not shy about it. Don't hide it. We just have to confront it. And I think as associations, we're not saying that renewables has to take over. We say that the word mix needs to be in there. So there needs to be some coal, some nuclear, some wind, some solar. But to get to the core point of the question, Alastair, is there going to be baseload renewables? I think there is going to be one day. When the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, there's no power going to be generated. We can't get away from that fact. But in South Africa, we're blessed. We have a lot of sunshine, a lot of wind, and sometimes the sun shines during the day and we get a peak demand, and generally our wind farms tend to perform well in the evenings and the days to get the evening and the morning peak. That alone is not going to solve the baseload problem. We're not fools to know that that's going to one day take over Eskom's role as a coal provider. But I think there's a future, especially when you're going to combine all of those with battery technologies, which is coming. So I always think when we started the renewable energy industry in earnest like 10 years ago, prices were very low, very, very high. Everything was expensive, and they needed the REIPPPP program to kickstart wind and solar in South Africa. And several REIPPPP rounds later, the private sector took off, and we have some of the cheapest energy from wind and solar in the world. We are actually at the same point, but getting there faster on battery storage. So a lot of people don't know that battery storage, the REIPPPP, or the energy storage program, launched last year. And that really kickstarted energy storage in a big way in South Africa. And prices are coming down. And I know in my day job, I'm seeing a lot of hybrid plants starting, like Vincent mentioned. And I think from next year, we're going to start seeing a play for wind and solar, or solar and BESS, to take off some of the slack from the coal plants and the peaker plants as well. So it is coming. Elsewhere in Africa, where there isn't a backup grid, they're already doing it. Tariffs are high, but it's only the beginning. As the price comes down, that base load will become more affordable in more mature markets like South Africa as well. Diplomatic answer as well.
Yeah, thanks, Zaid. So let's talk grid capacity. It's come up a lot today. How is this affecting the IPPs, and what action needs to take place in order to unlock that capacity?
It's a good question, and it's the most important question. I think if you ask anybody in renewables, they're going to ask you, what's your biggest problem? They're going to tell you, grid access, grid access, grid access. There's just not enough grid. Is that a problem? It is a problem. It is a challenge to solve. And a lot of people try and use that against renewables and say that, there's no grid, now we can't have renewables. But I think as associations, we say it's actually a good thing. It's a sign of maturity that we're starting to add more capacity onto the grid, and we're running up against the challenge where we need to add more infrastructure to back it up. Other countries in the world have also got to the same point as we did. So we're catching up with the rest of the world as well. And grid capacity is a problem in South Africa, and it's, as associations, I think we're trying to engage to help Eskom capacitate them. For them to upgrade their infrastructure with its substations, overhead lines, deep upgrades, MTSs. It's going to come. And we're quite positive as well, because there's a lot of talk from the IPP office and the DMRE about launching private sector participation in grid infrastructure. And I think once that comes, private sector will do its part, come to the party, and grid access will eventually become unlocked. Is it going to happen in the short term? No, I wish it would. But at the moment, it's something that the private sector is dealing with. I think some of the things we, as associations, want to help solve, for example, are interim capacity allocation rules and grid access, make that easier and more streamlined, de-risk it so lenders like it a little bit better, as well as make it more investor-friendly for the private sector. There is hope on the horizon. I think towards the end of the year, we're looking to see an RFP launched, hopefully, and get the same success story from REIPPPP repeated in the transmission space as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Ed. Okay, so Ricardo, over to you. So let's expand a bit on that. What are the policy reforms that are needed to fast-track not only renewables, but also unlocking the grid?
Thank you, Alastair, and good afternoon, colleagues and everyone. I think today was a discussion that reflected already much on policy and the shortcomings, where we need to align, where there's misalignment, and how we can overcome that. I think for me, what's important is that implementation part and getting the sequencing right. I think it was Deepak who said that the international community is putting a lot of faith in South Africa when it comes to our ability to marry what the real requirements are for climate change, but also, on the other hand, the scale and pace at which we transition to renewable energy. So I think the answer lies in all of that. So if you look at the policy scenario, I think one of the first things, and it's very refreshing that Silas was here earlier talking a bit about the IRP, that the minister, the new Ministry of Electricity and Energy has taken a fresh view on this by allowing us to look into what the assumptions are for basing the IRP 25 on, because previously it was flawed. We all know that. It's a highly contested terrain energy because it's the one technology trying to position itself versus the other technology, and hopefully we find one another in this IRP that will come out. However, the pace at which we do consultation and decision-making around our policy is very slow. It leads to investor instability, and for example, there was an announcement previously by government that the IRP would have been concluded by March of this year. We've missed that opportunity. It's still sitting with NEDLAC. We have so many stakeholders there. I don't even know if NEDLAC nowadays is functional because its history has been one of dysfunctionality. So coming to a decision there and to a recommendation to Cabinet is a story on its own. So capacity within the decision-making structures, we mentioned NERSA, for example, which is falling short on capacity, even by own admission. NERSA has not written trading rules. It is only going out now on a process of writing rules for energy trading. As an energy trader, Africa GreenCo takes a keen interest in this. So the rules have not been there. And the rules will only be developed or consulted on and developed over an 11-month period before it's gazetted. And then there's another process thereafter. What is even a bit more concerning is you don't have trading rules, but you want to introduce a wholesale energy market where trading is basically what you do on a daily basis. So you don't have the rules. You want to set up a market and launch it. Sorry, James is not here. He left the room. But I don't know how realistic it becomes in a scenario where the regulator has not written the rules. Now even the 11-month target is a stretch, because it has extended, I think, today or yesterday, the appointment of an independent market advisor to advise NERSA on this. So I don't know, there's a bit of a disjuncture, in fact, maybe a gaping one, between what's happening with the market rules and at the same time the launch of the electricity market. Even more concerning, we're developing all of these things. I have the misfortune of sometimes dealing with municipalities. I come from that sector in a previous life. So I've presented last week to some municipalities on the role of electricity traders, as well as the benefits of this wholesale energy market that is coming. And most of them, and this was the Western Cape chapter, which normally is considered more advanced in terms of what's happening in the market, trying out new things, etc. But even they didn't know much about SAWEA. There were those who didn't know anything at all. And yet they are defined as a market participant in the market code, as a balanced responsible party, something that is very critical in the functioning of that market and the system itself. So it does become a concern if municipalities, which is supposed to carry over the benefit, the cost benefit of a competitive market, if they do not know what to do. Tomorrow, I'm leaving tomorrow morning early to address a grouping of Eastern Cape municipalities. I don't know to what extent they've been left behind. Now those are municipalities, but at an apex level, if you engage with parliamentarians, the standing or the portfolio committee, it's even more disconcerting. They have no clue as to what is happening in this space. So yes, the content of the policy is not the problem. A lot of it is well written, well drafted, well considered. But I don't think it has taken account of key stakeholders, the capacity that is in the economy, and those are the factors that play an important role with regards to implementation.
So lack of awareness, alignment across the industry is an important gap which needs to be closed. We'll touch a bit more on that later in the session, but that links nicely to a question for you, Peter, and maybe you can pull up the Slido, please. Is the reprocess and allocation of generation capacity to provide private companies working efficiently? And whilst Peter's thinking about an answer to that, he has promised to speak his mind, so go for it.
Well, it's a very simple answer, no. So, the REIPP program was a fantastic program for the first 3 years. High prices, a market where no one knew anything, there were no skills, there was no finance. How would communities react to these big things that came along and all the trucks on the road and all of that? Since we had the 7-year hiatus in projects, the REIPP program is defunct. It's now for cheap solar. I don't know how projects make any IRR. The miners in the house, please laugh. I mean, you're banking projects at 11, 12% IRRs if you're doing 50-cent solar. The risk is just so large with all the community upheaval and all that other risk that you take. To make 10 or 11% is crazy. So the private sector is doing a fantastic job without the REIPP process. And the REIPP process needs to be repurposed to focus on transmission and battery storage, the things of the future, where we need government support and circa subsidies. But we should not continue with the REIPP program at all. The private sector is working well. We need to get government out of the way. We need to get grid allocation rules that work. Our budget quote that we received last week, I should have put it on a Slido. We applied for it February 2021, right? And we got it last week. And we pay Eskom a privilege of 21 million rand and then 180 million rand guarantee for that, right? So we're all in for 200 million, and it took 4 years, and that holds up a 5 billion rand investment, right? We have 25 billion to deploy in Mpumalanga for wind farms, and we can't get budget quotes. So it's really that simple. And REIPP doesn't help. Winning the REIPP doesn't help you get your grid allocation. Actually, the other way around. You win this and you don't get that. So the IPP office should really focus on new tech, providing good rules, getting out of the way, and potentially bringing some of these programs to new areas in the country where there is grid. You haven't had a wind farm allocated in 3 bid windows. That's because there's no grid in these areas, and solar's coming in at 45, 50, 55 cents. So there's a lot to be done. And we should spend that effort, government should spend that effort on streamlining the approval process and making sure that investment can get off the ground and have that pipeline. Government should just come in with a feed-in tariff that's 5% return on projects, and so you can build a project, and if you've got no other offtake, you can sell it to government, and more importantly, through the liquid market and the wholesale market once it's there. There should just be a clearing price. Guys, we're talking 50, 60, 70, 1 rand for electricity, when at home I pay 4 rand 20. Like, the value chain between the person generating is 1 rand, and government gobbles 3 rand 20 to take it from Mpumalanga to my front door. It makes no sense.
Yep. So 19 people have responded, and most say that pipeline projects.
Listen, we've got 50 people online and at least 20 people awake in this room. So come on, people. Take up your tool of mass democracy and express your views. Don't be influenced by the self-serving views of an insider, the man who doesn't need government anymore. So.
But he makes very good points. I mean,
he does, but that doesn't stop me from abusing.
That's what I signed up for.
Okay, so we'll leave that going. So Tebogo, let's over to you as CFO. I think you're well placed to answer this question. Which investment incentives attract private capital to renewables, and how should they be structured?
Great. So maybe to dial it back a bit, and some points based on Peter's comments. I'm chuckling to myself. Dialing back. So South Africa has done well in attracting private sector investment in renewables. So this has been largely through the REIPP. So about just under 300 billion has been invested in the REIPP since its inception. And also that growth has also been supported by appropriate tax policies. So in order to continue on that scale, and also then, adding in elements of decarbonization and also grid capacity constraints, it's important that future incentives do evolve, and that they do address challenges and barriers, as expressed, by my co-panelists. And also where possible, to start to, have some kind of foresight in terms of market evolutions. So, in terms of the REIPP, so what future bid windows can consider is, one, I think there has to be better alignment on grid capacity constraints, and that also has to be supported by appropriate momentum on grid expansion grid expansion plans. From a permitting perspective, yes, the processes have improved and timelines have reduced, but there's still opportunity for improvement. And also, there is a need for just better alignment, between public sector procurement and private sector procurement. So on the private side, South Africa is no longer anchored by a government procurement program. So there's been many PPAs and bilaterals signed in the past couple of years. So in order to, continue on that momentum of private sector investment, for example, grid location grid incentives can be used to direct investments to areas where it is needed. Looking at, smaller players, there's an opportunity to facilitate and unlock their participation, in the market. So through, initiatives like SAWEA, if done correctly, and also through credit support mechanisms as well. And, just on SAWEA, so, totally concur. I think it is a complex initiative, and there's many questions in the market in terms of how it's going to be appropriately rolled out. But in theory, it is supposed to facilitate or drive competition, and also, change business models from longer-term PPAs to more hybrid and merchant business models. But it has to be rolled out in a considered way, and with the appropriate consultations.
All right, thanks, Thabo. So besides grid capacity and investment challenges, what are the challenges miners are facing in rolling out renewables? What are the big things?
Yeah, so, starting with the commercial and legal structures, they are complex. And, navigating those is not child's play. I think anyone, even with, years and years of REIPP experience, does face challenges. So typically, mines, can be, based in multi-jurisdictions. So negotiating PPAs, can be a challenge. And also, allocating risk appropriately, negotiating, elements around price, availability, and penalties can, be hurdles in terms of PPA negotiations. And, if you are, if the mine is part of a larger group, typically decision-making can also take a long time. Peter's smiling. And there's also considerations around just matching the typical economic life of a power plant with that of a remaining life of mine. So renewable energy projects typically have a economic life of, on average, of between 20 to 30 years. Lives of mines can be lower. So concerns can be raised around, optimization, redeployability, stranded assets. That somewhat can be mitigated through aggregation. And issues around grid do creep up as well, as major challenges. And also, when I talk to my business development colleagues, they will, have moans around wheeling frameworks, around transparency, consistency, and also just maturity in that process. But all in all, when I look at the CNI market and I take a step back, so I'm a bit of an optimistic person. The CNI market has grown substantially over the past couple of years. Challenges have been faced, and sober decisions have been made, and risk allocation has been applied. So I think it's there's still opportunity there, with role players, having discussions in order to find solutions to these obstacles.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Bob. So there's many challenges, and then the question comes down to how are the industry associations helping with these challenges. So what I'm going to do now is Vincent and Zaid are here representing two of them. Give them a time to just state their case very briefly. I see we're running out of time. And whatever you say, Peter's then going to vet it and say yes or no, you are following through.
Can Bernard protect me, because I've got 3 members on the panel here, so that they can advise me if I'm doing my job or not. Maybe just on the Slido, you saw the results. The results said we need consistency. Consistency offers that investors surety and investors confidence. Okay, so if that's in place, we've done our job as associations. Okay, so it's advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. That's what we do. It's got 2 legs, proactive, reactive. Reactive to any policy that comes out, proactive to say, okay, independent transmission projects. Let's look at the corridors and the substations we need to strengthen. Gamma Grass Ridge, 765 corridor, easy win, longer project, but it will unlock 2.8 gigawatts of wind, as an example. So that's where the proactive stint comes in. And then also, year of the grid for SAWEA, we are sitting with in excess of 6 gigawatt backlog, according to the approved integrated resource plan, predominantly Western Eastern Cape. Things are going our way, it's moving slowly, congestion curtailment's been approved, ramping down of majority of the IPPs by 10% to make space, 3.4 gigawatts, Western Cape, Eastern Cape. If we get clarity on that by August this year, we should sit with commercial date of operation of that 3.4 gigawatt by Q1, Q2 2027. All things being equal. But policy, government, stakeholders, associations, members need to have the hard talks, sit around the table, and get to an agreement.
Zaid, anything to build on that?
I think he said it quite well, so I support everything he just said. Look, I think there's a place for associations, and it's a thankless job. And as someone who's been doing this since REIPPPP round 1, dealing with Eskom isn't always easy, and it's also a lot of misunderstanding. And I think associations play a role behind the scenes that people don't realize. It's not just IPPs, for example, or stakeholders in this. It's government. It is Eskom. It's manufacturers, etc. And associations play a really important role in making sure that their voices are heard, not only with IPPs, not only with Eskom, but all the way up to the presidency. And I know our CEO at SAWEA takes a lot of these unknown voices, the voices for the smaller IPPs, and speaks on their behalf as well. Then there's also a plethora of initiatives that come across from SAWEA and SAWEA, which a lot of people don't realize is run by volunteers. And often the work gets put in and Eskom publishes a paper. But there was countless hours and many experts who advised for free in their own time to do it. And I know IG car isn't perfect, Peter, but it's better than was nothing happened before. But that was a success story from SAWEA and SAWEA, that if we didn't intervene when the round 5 and 6 failed, we would be still in the chaos of no rules. So we got imperfect rules, which was championed by SAWEA, SAWEA, and other associations. There's a role to play. And when there's a call from industry, there's always 1,000 opinions, and a lot of the value can get lost in the noise. And I think this industry associations do a good job in filtering that, finding consensus, finding common ground, and putting those things forward. And I don't want to go too on about it, but there's lots of initiatives. For example, SAWEA and SAWEA contribute to discussions with NECOM and with the presidency, through the South African market reforms, etc., which our colleagues spoke about. But I think other initiatives, I've literally helped them run initiatives now for the National Renewable Energy Grid Survey, which Eskom itself has admitted is one of their key documents for the TDP to plan upcoming transmission. This was championed for free by the industry associations to take forward, to pull industry together and help Eskom solve this problem. So I think there's a lot of positive contributions that are not overlooked, but sometimes goes unnoticed. But we're always there in the background to push the agenda, to speak for the industry. And at the end of the day, we want what's best for everybody. It's not just for our own members or one party only.
Yeah. Okay, so points all noted. Peter, in the ideal world, what could they do better? What would you appreciate?
Look, as members of five of these associations that we put money and time into, they're too timid. There's too many egos. They don't work together as one association, and they really need to get together. It's exactly like the junior miners were speaking to panel. Like, there's too many egos in the room. Oh, I must speak to NECOM. No, I must speak to NECOM. Oh, I'm the brainiest in the room. At the end of the day, it's the members, which again, I'm a member of 5 of these, saying the same thing to these people, and then it's just egos.
Are there 5?
No, there's a lot more. I only can fund 5. Sorry, Bernard. So,
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's so many, you know. So, you know, that is a challenge. We need a single voice, whoever it is. I don't care. Fight to the death with a sword. But like, let's get to the point where there's one voice, because at the moment, Silas stands there, and when Silas phones the associations, he phones 8 different people and 8 different opinions, and then he discards all 8 of them.
Yeah, you can play that.
Right?
much, yeah.
So the association should get in a room, and these are our lines. You take wind, you take solar. Who's taking grid? Who's dealing with NECOM? Who's dealing with BUSA? Who's doing these things? And really stay in your lane, because for us as members, my team is stretched providing input to 5 organizations.
So better, better collaboration across the...
Less egos.
Less egos, got it. Okay, so we've got 4.5 minutes, so changing tack slightly, Vincent, very briefly. So beyond solar and wind, which renewables or tech solutions can deliver both green energy and greater socio-economic impact?
Okay, quick one. SAWEA, one of the associations, South African Biogas Industry Association. Very nice example of a corporate social investment for a REIP or private project. 50 school learners produce roughly 10 kilograms of food waste every day. That is on par with 2 cows, manure, if we can talk about that here. That equates to biogas installed capacity of 5 kilowatts. Very good example. It's going to supply power to a household. And then what Zaid could also testify from is rooftop solar in these rural communities where microgrid is also an ideal solution.
Cool, thank you. So it ties in nicely also with the work Ken and Sasol are doing. So that whole bioenergy space, I think, has lots of potential in South Africa. So then that brings us to funding. So JET funding, Peter. How can that be done better?
It's very simple. They need to go where the projects are. 85% or more of JET spending in Mpumalanga last year was spent on consultants. Not one of them have visited the only JET project by the private sector in Mpumalanga. Not one. And we're talking billions of rands. So the ambassador from the EU admitted, maybe I should get out of my ivory tower and actually visit the people that the JET's for. Those were her words.
But clearly we are creating a consulting industry.
Overseas. Overseas. Because you obviously appoint a Norwegian consultant to tell us where the wind is in Mpumalanga, where wind farms are being built. Because that's the obvious, right? To appoint a Norwegian consultant. Isn't it? I mean, isn't this the logic? So we need to get out of our ivory tower. 85% of spending should be done on projects that are directly on the ground. If they're not geographically on the ground, 15% can be spent on consultants. But it's hard. Mpumalanga is hard. And that's why we are big supporters of this day. Miners are the only people that are going to get renewables right in Mpumalanga, because the issues in Mpumalanga are mining issues. There is no commonality between the Middelburg in the Eastern Cape and the Middelburg in Mpumalanga. There is no commonality. There are wind farms being built in both areas, and the problems are totally different. You cannot get your workers to work, the community unrest, the violence. You know, our coal mine has numerous people coming onto our mine daily at Middelburg, and we deal with this with drones and security and other proactive things. People building wind farms in the middle of the Northern Cape don't have people coming onto their wind farms, correct? So miners need to take a proactive role in the JET on the ground, and that's where this funding should go to exactly what this day is about, right? Bringing that transition from mining and renewables, not all.
Thanks, Peter. So we weren't one of those consultants, just by the way.
Yet, but you are aspiring.
Pipeline.
Final question of the day. You've got 1 minute, Ricardo. So besides this JET funding, there's also a lot of pools of money available. There's the SLP, there's the community trusts, there's the rehabilitation funds. How do we better coordinate the use of those funds so that they're used and channeled to the right areas?
Thanks, Alastair. I think the foundation has been laid for my response to that through Peter and the other panelists. I think it's a it's a trend or a requirement across mining to have SLPs on the one hand, but also renewable projects need to have ED and SED spend. Although there are slight differences. With the renewable projects, there's that old 60 kilometer radius around a project, which kind of applied, which is a silly thing. But I think there already are opportunities for collaboration. Mike Tiki mentioned this morning, in the one town, they're mining coal, a couple of kilometers from there, they're setting up a wind farm. Beautiful opportunity for collaboration and breaking down those barriers. On the SLP side, there's a requirement to consult with municipalities. Otherwise, your SLP is not going to be approved. On the renewable energy side, there's no requirement to consult with the municipality legally, but you kind of, as good practice, you still have to do that. So I think we maybe need to revisit the design of some of the programs to get the coordination right, but then also to align that spend with the envelope of money that is coming in through the Just Energy Transition funding, but also to ensure more fundamentally that the projects that they support are proper projects. It is disconcerting that the consultants have not been, and this is my experience as well, it's a matter very close to my heart. I've worked in communities, I've worked at policy level with this stuff. I've been into households, poor households, so where you literally can see. But it's not a problem linked only to Mpumalanga. We've seen this where one of a South African-bred multinational in Katu is sitting in a trust. In their trust, there's about 4 billion rand community money. It's unspent, yet they have the goal to appoint consultants with offices on Wall Street in New York, a type of an NGO. The community have never seen them, but they report it as spent in the annual report. We've spent so many billions on the community. We've procured so much. So I think we fundamentally need to revisit the design of many of these programs and then ensure that we pull these resources and channel them into sustainable projects where, number one, it is based on economic fundamentals of that area. We cannot do hemp in an area where hemp will never be viable. So the economic fundamentals, number one, and number two, business principles.
Ricardo,
Even if it's...
I need to get to the question, so just wrap it up, will you?
I'm ramping it up. I don't want to stand between you and the wine. But in any case, finally, it's those business principles which are inviolate if we're going to make a success of the just energy transition, to ensure that we don't waste money in a context that is resource poor. We cannot duplicate, we cannot waste. So it becomes very important that your brokers are honest and your principles are sound.
Thabo, I'm going to interrupt him with a question to you, because this man is passionate about what he's passionate about. There are two questions that speaks to funding. The one question is about, is there adequate international funding provided to South Africa? If not, why not? And then there's a question about the IRRs. Are you getting the similar IRRs between the old fancy REIPPPP? Did I say REIPP? There was some REIPP involved in those projects, window 1 and 2, but let me rephrase it, REIPP. How does the sort of private renewable projects compare with the original REIPP projects? So talk a little bit briefly about funding. Is there enough, and how the returns looking now?
Great. I'll start with the returns, and I think Peter said it earlier. So, so the return profile has dropped. And you can see it in the tariffs as well. I mean, if I remember, your bid window 1, bid window 2 tariffs were, I think for wind, I think R1 in the mid R1.50s or something, and obviously you apply escalation, so it's been, in today's terms, you're looking at closer to R2.
Over R2, we've been told, and it will never make a return, we've been told by Eskom.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Solar was, was significantly higher. So I think, REIPP, I think IRRs back in the day was somewhere between, let's say, 18 to 27,
yeah, but 29%. They were built in. They were designed to be that. There was no risk.
Well, there was risk at the time, and hence the pricing. So, lenders were still getting comfortable. The technology was relatively newer compared to now. So hence why you had those dynamics. I mean, now, I think it depends on which IPP you speak to. So I think markets are looking at anything between 10 to 18. And there is interesting gymnastics that people are doing in order to bolster returns. And
Gymnastics and financing always ends up in scandals, but we'll be around when that happens.
I will not mention famous names. And I mean, from a funding perspective, I mean, there is quite a lot of interest. So, I mean, before, and I mean, still you have your local South African banks, you know, kind of being predominant in the market. But we've seen, you know, quite a lot of international funders coming in, I mean, over and above DFIs. So, you know, no funds, CRPs, your private equity funds, you know, participating in the market.
There's not really a funding shortage at this stage.
No, no. If you talk to the commercial banks, they'll say that they've got lots of money to lend.
Alastair wraps up this incoherent group of mad people that you put on this panel. They're all sulking whilst they make shitloads of money. So just wrap it all up for us. 2 minutes to wrap it up.
So I think the future, if we have the collaboration and alignment and ownership across the different parties involved.
These parties, the renewable parties.
Yes, exactly.
And the regulator.
Everybody. I think it's such a positive future. It's just that there's so many people pulling in different directions that somebody needs to take the voice and actually align everybody and push in the same direction. And when that happens, I think it's a really positive story for South Africa going forward.
Ladies, gentlemen, again, I've learned so much from you guys. Thank you very much. I know for you it's probably not as new. I have really, really learned a lot from this conversation. And hopefully some of our audience and online audience, we've still had over 40 people online. They don't get wine, so there's more for us now. Thank you very much, final panel. It's a tough shift. You did well. We're inviting Peter back for the friction he causes here at the end. The beautiful warmth. We have all earned a drink. Paula and your team, I really want to thank you once again. You bring from coal miners to mad people, or not you guys, obviously, other people. It's a day that has become one of my favorites because we discuss a key and critical part of our country's future. It's the, will we have the energy? Will it be renewable, sustainable, and affordable? And I think we've seen many of the parts of that solution being exposed today, and the challenges. So thank you, Paula and team. Well done, as always. Final panel, you've made me want a glass of wine. Jeez. Baie dankie, everybody. Thank you very much. Sir.